So I've also opened the notification that I've received from Jason for the task that he's assigned to me. On my task, I had the screenshot added to my description, and if I open that up, I can have a look at the description itself. I can look at the picture that he's attached or added, and I can even read like the notes and see all the things that he's added. I need to make the frame, so let's go into SOLIDWORKS. What I've done was I've actually pre-made the sketch that I'm going to use for the frame itself, and let me go and grab that quickly. So for my frame, there's a few different ways that you can go and create the frame, right? There's my pre-made sketch. All I did was I just made the sketch beforehand. There's really nothing funny about the sketch. I'll show you now once it's opened up. Okay, so once it's loaded, you can see it's just a normal sketch. I've got two sketches, a 2D sketch and another sketch that's just in a different plane. Both my sketches are just plain normal sketches, basic lines, dimensions. I've added in some sketch relations. I could add a lot more, but for now I'm going to leave it as is just to see will everything work together. The whole idea is to take the 3 bush cutters, put them next to each other, and then bolt on the frame to the bush cutters so that I have the ability later on to remove them again from each other if and when necessary, because one person's not going to be doing the work all the time. Maybe the other 2 will come back soon, and then we might need the 3 tractors separate again. So for this, I have my sketch over here, my sketches that I'm going to use to construct my structure around this. SOLIDWORKS is 2 different methods that you can use to actually create the structure. The first is to use Weldments. The Weldments portion of it is predominantly meant for smaller structures, so that's what I'll be using today. There is another one that you can also use called Structure Systems. Structure System, it was designed with the idea of larger things like warehouses or a larger structure or bigger frames. I'm going to be using my Weldments, and I'm going to start by adding in my structure member. In my structure member, I have the ability to choose the type of members that I'm going to be using. So I first choose the library that I want to use. There are standard libraries within SOLIDWORKS, but I'm going to be using our Max Steel library that we've created. From here, I can choose the type of element that I want to use. Let's start with something standard that I know we have in stock. And I can also go in and choose the size of the element that I want to use. Again, you can choose from different sizes. If the size that you're looking for does not exist, you can also go and add your own sizes to the members that exist. Right, and then I just need to add them, right? So first say to the system where I need to place all of these beams in. Once I've added them in, I can then say what I want to happen with them. So currently they're all kind of looking outside of my sketch. What if I want them to turn around and look towards the inside? I can go and do that by just rotating them so that they're looking to the inside. Let's go and add another group. So I can add other members inside of this. I don't have to split them out. In this one, I want this one to actually look to the other side. So I'm going to rotate this one as well. But I don't want to just rotate it. These. No. There. I don't want it to just rotate. I also want to change its position of where it sits inside of the sketch. So what you can do is you can move the item itself around with respect to the sketch. So if I click on this button over here, I'll be able to see the profile that was used to generate the shape, and I can then choose this point, for example, and it will move the entire beam up with respect to where the rest of the members are. That's not actually where it should be, so let's change another position for it. I'm going to be using that point over there, and I'll insert one more group and do exactly the same just on the other side. So I'm going to insert another one over here. That one is looking in the right direction. I just need to change where it is sitting so that it does the same as the one next to it. There we go. And my first structure, or my first part of the structure, is in. From here, I can do other stuff. I can go and add my end connections, or I can decide what should happen to the ends where they're connecting with each other. Like over here, I can see there's a mistake. I'll fix that later. For now, what I'm going to do is I first need to add in the rest of the beams. So the cross members, that's going to give this thing just a little bit of strength so that it doesn't fall apart. Because it needs to carry three heavy things it needs to keep together. So I'm going to insert the rest of my structural members. Again, I can go and choose what item it is I want to use. I'm going to use the 50 by 50 because that's the size I know we have in stock. And just identify where I want all of these members to be placed at. I'm going to do this one slightly different than I did with the others. So I'm first going to identify the ones that I want to be placed all looking in the same direction and change their positioning. That should be that point. Oh, and they're also looking in the wrong direction, so I'm just going to flip them around. There we go. And I'm going to finish it. And then I can go and add in another set of members. These are going to look in the same direction as the previous one, so they're going to be the flange bits, if you can call it those, will be sitting next to each other. So I'm going to flip these around as well and just change their positioning. This I'm doing just to show you that there are different ways to generate the same type of element. Okay, once I've done that, there we go. Now I need to decide what's happening with this one over here. As you can see, it's not actually the right length. And I also want to make sure that everything else is correct according to the first beam. So I'm going to my trim extend, and I'm going to say these 3 items, or 4 items, let's use this one as well, are all going to be trimmed at the same point based off of where this beam is, so that the first beam is the longest beam that we have. At the bottom over here, I have the ability to allow for extension. So if I do have a funny curve or anything, I can either extend it to that curve, or I can cut it straight flat, which in my case I will be doing because it's the easiest thing to do in our scenario. I can also include something like a weldment gap, because I'm going to weld some of these elements together, which I can then include that gap if I want to. For me, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to bolt these things together, and I will show you how I'm going to do that a little bit later. Why not? This should work. Again, a demo effect. Let's first just do those 2. And then I'll just add the other one in now. Okay. Next up, I'm going to do the same thing, but for the cross beams that I have. So must add a structural member, add another trim extend. I'm going to focus on one side. So I'll do it on the side over here. So I know this one is going to be trimmed by this body over here and that body over there. Just a note, you'll see I get these little flying notes that allows me to decide which part of the beam is it that I want to discard or keep. So if you've got a very long beam that's going to be split into different segments, you can choose which ones to skip and keep, or discard and keep. And for this one over here, I'm going to do something slightly different. So instead of using the main beam as the trimming boundary, I am going to be using this one over here and that one. So now if I zoom into this bit over here, you'll see that this beam is actually connecting with this one over here, and this angled one is actually connecting to this one over here. So if I really want to, I can actually weld these together so that I've got one triangle that I can then just move in, but I'm going to bolt them together onto the bigger frame. And I can actually then go and do exactly the same on all the rest, the two other triangles that I have. To connect these to my main frame, I need to think about what's happening with this frame. Because this frame is going to jump up and down a lot with the tractor, it's going to move over the terrain, there is going to be a lot of friction, so I need to keep in mind that it needs to have a little bit of leeway so that it doesn't snap off and break the first time we use it. So instead of welding everything together, which I can do, I'm going to bolt these things together so that it has the ability to, one, easily be removed if necessary, and two, that it has a little bit of leeway so that it doesn't just snap off at the first bump it hits. To insert these things, I can use connection elements. Now, connection elements was introduced with structure systems a while back in SOLIDWORKS, and the connection elements, there are a few standard connection elements there's a few sample connection elements inside of SOLIDWORKS that one can use, but the whole idea behind having the ability to define them is so that you can make and generate your own library of content. So your own type of connection items that you will be using. I'm going to show you how we're going to define an element. I've created one already. So the part has been generated, it just hasn't been saved as a connection or defined as a connection element. So here's my part. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ensure that I save it to the correct location. So I'm going to save it to a standard location where I know, where I know my connection elements is actually reading from. So I've got a library of contents that I'm growing, and I'm just going to pop it in here so that I can actually reuse this inside of my frame that I'm building. Okay, once I've done that, I can define the element. When I define the element, I have the ability to say what faces are the faces that I'm going to be using to stick this item down onto the frame. So let's clear all of these and then we just do it from scratch. Okay, so for my primary reference, I'm going to be using this face over here. I can then choose a secondary reference, which is going to be this face over here. And my third reference, that will just say, if this is the beam, where should it be placed at on the beam itself. And for that, I will be using this face over here. Then last but not least, I have the ability to choose what features I want to carry over to my frame. When I do this, I'm basically skipping one major step, and that is having to go back after I've added in all the elements and adding in the holes to prepare the beams for when it needs to be assembled. So I'm basically saving myself a lot of time by doing this one tiny thing, and that is including these features over here. Those are just standard holes that I've generated using the hole wizard. If you're using a basic plate or just a plate that you want to have the ability to increase or decrease the sizes of the plate from, you can go and include dimension or dimension groups so that when you use this item, you can change it instead of having to make a new connection element every single time. I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, back to our frame. Let's go and insert that connection element that I've just defined. So I can insert the connection element from my structure system tab. And if you're looking for this, remember tabs are on your right click on the command manager. You go to tabs and there you'll find your structure systems tab. I'm going to insert my connection member, choose the standard item that I want to use. Over here I have the ability to choose the type of connection element that I want to use. So there's the 90-degree one that I've just created. And if I click on it, you will be able to see a preview thumbnail of what that item looks like. If I click on the placement tab, I then have the ability to choose where it's going to be placed down. And for my third reference, I'm going to be using that over there. Okay, if I want to move it down, I actually have the ability to offset that with a specific value. And then I have this portion over here where I can choose the cut scope. That is going to tell SOLIDWORKS which other items is it that I want to have an effect on. So if I were to say my cut scope is going to be this beam and this beam over here, when I click the OK button, not only will it insert the beam, but let's isolate this beam over here. You'll see it also adds in the holes. Okay, so again, that saves me a lot of time because I have the ability to now just make a drawing of this item on its own. I don't have to go back, first add the holes, and then make the drawing. I could just immediately start by making the drawing. Okay, I'm going to add in one more connection element. Of course, when you want to complete this entire thing, you add in all of the different all of the connection elements that you might need. I'm going to insert another one over here. So this is just very straightforward, right? 90 degrees. When you're working with a large structure, you'll typically want to be adding stuff in like end plates. That you'll do through your weldments. There is actually an ability over here where you can add your end caps, gussets, and other things like that. But with a larger structure, you want to be able to add things like the base plate. So you can actually do that. But then for other funny type of weird angles, for example, or other strange things, you can actually use the connection elements. So over here you'll see there's the sample library that they give you. And here they've got a sample base plate, beam splice, and a few others that you can go and use. I'm going to use another one that I've generated earlier on, and it's an angled connection one. This one is slightly different than the one that I've used before because it's got other angles, not just the 90-degree angle that we can use, which is pretty standard. So I can actually generate my own angles that I want to use. They do not have to be standard on the dot. They could be any type of size. I'm going to use this one over here. And for my placement, stick this down over here, there, and my third reference, place it down. Again, I'm going to use the offset just to bring it back to where I want it to be. And for my cut scope, again, cut it through those two members because this time it's going to be using one of those angled beams. Click OK. And then once that is done, again, if I were to isolate this one over here, you'll be able to see it does add the hole in there. So I don't need to go back, make this, open up this component by its own and add the holes. The system do that for me already. In real life, I'll be adding in the connection elements for every single corner that I have. And once I'm done with this, of course, I'll save it to the platform. For now, instead of telling Jason that I'm finished with it, I'll tell him that I am working on it. So I'm going to go to my tasks. Where am I now? Let's go to my tasks. There's my task. So I'm just going to drag it to in work, and then I'll add in a comment. Let's add in a comment. Can I add it under description? There we go. There we go. And then I'll just say I'm in the process of completing the frame with connection elements. And there we go.